Hello, we are live, streaming live and recording to you in this 87th version of I Need Living Conversations, where me, Julian Katari, gets together with Sacred Blue Heroin Woman in Indianola, Oklahoma, and we share with you different topics. This week, we're talking for a sixth time. We continue on the sustenance branch of the Great Principle, and we have a program prepared about the behavior. How does behavior affect our bodies, our energy, our shapes, our lives, or what are we going to talk about? So here it is with you, Sacred Blue Heron Woman. Welcome and welcome everyone. So what's had a big scare with the kitten here. She fell down from high up. And
yeah. And that's, we're just going to talk about that with it's always such an amazement to me how the old ones channel words and then it physically manifests.
Yeah.
But how does this all go with sustaining life? Well, it goes with our question of, is there a God? What is life? Is there more to life than just working to make a living and retiring and dying of disease?
Mm.
That's actually what sustains life, and that's all this mumbo jumbo that we've been through all pretty much leads to that. It takes a bit of deep dive to understand everything I've gone through for the last few weeks to lead to this fact that it's all about the inquiry of what is life, and to understand that we are self-sustaining autopoietic unities. We're self-regulating, self-sustaining, self-containing, self-regulating with spirit.
Yeah.
So we're going to go to words from the old ones again, and this is still from Nukua, our Chinese goddess, so to speak. So she says, all of you ask, what is everyday Tao? And we're here, we the old ones are here to tell you that it's nothing really, because you don't hear nature boasting about being nature, and water does not come together at a hotel in Mexico or a hotel in Atlanta or a hotel in Japan every year to discuss its flow techniques for the next year. It just does. So for you human beings to be human beings of the Tao, you must live like a fish in water. And if you humans tried to teach the fish that water is physically made of 2 parts of hydrogen and 1 part of oxygen, the fish would just laugh their heads off at you and saying, what does that have to do with me swimming and living? How does that affect me? So what is Aloha, Aini, Tao, De, living? Those 2 little words, that 2 little lettered word, De.
What is it?
It is the way of you human beings' conscious cooperation with the cycles of the natural world that we sang and breathed into being. And you discover the principles of this way of living in the flow patterns of water and fire, which are subsequently memorialized in stone and wood, in even the patterns of wind. Through Aini, sociability becomes reconciled with individuality, order becomes reconciled with spontaneity through the Tao, and unity through diversity with Aloha. Yet all 3 are all. That neither one can be separated from either of the others. So Aloha, Aini, Tao, De living is being interested in the spirit, the actual experiencing, the feeling in your bodies, your microcosms, the attitude of life, which is the way of water, the way of wind. So now let's talk about that 2-letter word, Te, De, the Tao De Jing, the Aloha, Aini, Tao, De living.
Okay.
So De is the realization of the Tao in actual living. De is what happens by the thundering grace of us, the old ones. You can call De virtuality, the possession of force or power. So De is already present in the seed that shows in the miraculous fruition of plants. It's already present in the oak that produces, in the acorn that produces the 300-year-old oak. The formation of your eyes and ears, the circulation of your blood, everything that comes about without conscious direction, that is De. You could say De is the natural virtue based on your inner feeling, your trust of yourself. If you do not realize this power, then you attempt to state the principles of nature in words, and then follow those words as if they were the law. So the De can be illustrated in the skills of the cooper, the barrel maker, the wheelwright, the wheel maker, the stemsmith, the boat builder that builds the stern of the ship, the craftsman, the craftswoman. Old-fashioned Japanese carpenters use no blueprint, judging everything by the eye, putting together marvelous pieces of joinery without glue or nails. The men of rice in Mexico build terraces so water will flow to all of the fields to do her job of nurturing, and they don't use any kind of level. They simply let water guide them in finding level. So the movement of their working, harvesting is being like a dance, poetry, music, art, and the feeding of people and animals and all of life at the same time. So out of China, we have Chui, an artisan of ancient China who could draw circles with his hand better than with compasses. His fingers seemed to accommodate themselves so naturally to the thing he was working at that it was unnecessary to fix his attention. Those who cannot make arc, line, compasses, and square injure the natural constitution of things. Those who require cords to bind and glue to stick interfere with the natural function of things. And those who seek to satisfy the mind of man by fussing with ceremonies and music and preaching charity and duty to one's neighbor also destroy the intrinsic nature of things. Those are pretty harsh words. We realize that.
Mm-hmm.
You humans need the harshness to understand how much you interfere and don't let nature take its course.
Mm.
We're not saying there's anything wrong with doing ceremonies. You just need to understand that if you do them to interfere, you're interfering.
Yeah.
If you do them to be in harmony, then you're in harmony.
Mm-hmm.
So another story of Ching, the chief carpenter of the royalty, who was carving wood into a stand for hanging musical instruments. When he was finished, his work appeared as though of supernatural execution. The Prince of Lu asked him, saying, "What mystery is there in your art?" And he replied, "No mystery, and yet there is something. Because when I am about to make such a stand, I guard against any diminution of my vital power. I guard against any belittling of it. I first reduce my mind to absolute quiescence, and 3 days in absolute quiescence, and I become oblivious of any reward to be gained by creating this stand. 5 days in absolute quiescence, and I become oblivious to any fame to be acquired. And 7 days, I actually become unconscious of my forelimbs and physical frame, and then my skill becomes concentrated so that I can enter the mountain forest, search for the tree that contains the form required, and I see the stand in my mind's eye and set to work. So I bring my own natural capacity into relationship with that of the tree and the wood to make the stand to hang musical instruments on that is of supernatural quality. The boatman says, "Yes, rowing you across the river can be learned. However, the way of those who know how to keep you afloat is more like the way of sinking you, because they row as if the boat isn't there." That means that this boatsman is oblivious of the water. He regards the rapids as though they are dry land. He looks upon the upset of his boat as a mere ordinary car accident. And if such a man can be impervious to capsizings and accidents in general, whither should he not be comfortable to go? The wheelwright says, in making the wheel, if you make it too slowly, you can't make it firm. If you work too fast, the spokes won't fit in. So there must be coordination of mind and hand, and this is the Tao, or the day. Tao day, right? The day, the 2-letter word. So this day is virtuality. Since it can't be taught or learned, the theme has become that man has fallen from grace, so must replace this inner knowing, this inner being, the day power with technology.
Mhm.
But in living out your fullest life of potential through Aloha Aini Tao Day living, the chances of your survival are best when there is no anxiety to survive. And the greatest power day is to those who do not seek power and to those who do not use force. To be anxious to survive is to wear oneself out, and to seek power and to use force is to overstrain your system. So one is best preserved by floating along without stress. And your science has proved that less than 1% of all your human diseases are genetic, and 99% more are all stress related. So stress-free, floating along, wu wei, without force. And the theme runs throughout all your human spiritual literature that you will receive whatever you want if you do not acknowledge the lack of it, or come from a being of the lack of it. And if you want to share with what you receive with everyone equally, then you will receive everything that you desire. And it's not the desire, as opposed the Buddhists say, that causes suffering. It's your attachment to the desire, the outcome, that causes suffering. So the Tao loves and nourishes all things and does not lord it over them. And that is the true essence of a matriarch also. Loves and nourishing all things and not lording that love and nourishment over them. And your human organisms have the same kind of innate wisdom as the ecosystems of nature. And so the wisdom of your nerves and senses and everything else in your body must be felt with patience and respect. So empiricism, that which is known as experiences of the senses as your source of knowledge, and mysticism go together because they're based on the nonlinear world of experience rather than the linear world of letters and numbers.
Mm.
What is important for the mystic is not belief in the right doctrine. It is the true experience of everything. To the mystic experimenter, that which is written is always subordinate to the observation of what is. So, or that which is spoken. So, coming to myself, Ingrid, the human, on my ranch here in Oklahoma, I have had numerous men accost me with their intense desire to castrate my pigs, goats, and cattle, and cannot understand why I won't let them. And they tell me that they're here to show me the better way by doing that.
But
because
like,
their philosophy,
they want to do it?
they absolutely, it's like they foam at the mouth to do it. They have rabies for us castrating.
That's
And
weird.
their answer is the written word or the spoken tradition that male animals do not grow without having their balls taken off. In my experimentation of ranching, everything grows. That's just the ontological process. So that is what a radical mystic experimenter is working with. Is this really true? Is this philosophy that an animal, a male animal, specifically a male animal, right? We don't do this to female animals. We do this specifically to male, saying they won't grow if we don't take their balls off.
They won't grow.
They won't grow.
I mean, Doesn't make sense to me.
No, because I have living proof of it here every day that they grow. I have a 150 to 180-pound buck goat out there who weighs that much, even though he has his testicles. So please tell me what part of that is not growing. Oh, then they say, well, it grows faster. Well, I'm sorry, you can't hack nature. Remember what we talked about last week? You try to cut the 1/4 inch of the banana off of each end, and you have just that much. You don't have the whole banana.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that to the mystic experimenter of Aloha Aini Dao de living,
Mm-hmm.
that which is written is always subordinate to the observation of what truly is in nature. So Confucians, the Hebrew, Islamic, Catholic, and all other religious scholastics are like tourists who study guidebooks and maps instead of wandering freely to experience the view, the culture. So speech and writing are undoubtedly marvelous. We're not knocking your human's ability to speak and write, but yet for this very reason, they have a hypnotic and fascinating quality which has led you humans to the neglect of nature itself. And so speech and writing have become too much of a good thing. So when the rule of law becomes absolutized and everything is done by the book or the computer, then you humans call in desperation for the intervention of a reasonable being. That is why there are no rules for day
Mm-hmm.
virtuality, and there can be no textbooks for instructing lawyers and judges in the senses of equity and fair play, because one has to have a feel for it, as an ancient craftsman did. So the human of day is always going beyond the rules because the fountain of creative work is in the intelligent questioning of the rules. So day also means going along with the unity of the eye and heart mind. And this is shown best in the story of Thor Heyerdahl and the story of Kon-Tiki, where he and his crew drifted on a balsa wood made raft from Peru to distant islands in the South Seas just by going along with the natural processes of the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Their genius was that they had a basic trust in the unity system of their own organisms and bodies, along with the ecosystem of the Pacific. And so they were almost as intelligent as a dolphin.
Mm-hmm.
By virtue of this attitude, they were helped along by events that they could not have consciously expected. Because in water, the balsa wood swelled to bind the logs of the raft more securely, and then every morning there were flying fish on the deck for their breakfast. So like the hummingbird, they had no need to pack for their journey. They were simply provided with everything they needed along the way. So their and your human success when you fall into the current of the Tao depends on the confidence and lack of self-frustrating anxiety, which in turn is derived from the insight that in the course of nature and following the line of least resistance in nature, nothing can go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I personally just had experience of this, and people would tell me, well, you're not following the course of least resistance because I'm bucking the system. And when I was writing, when these words were being channeled to me today, I realized that following the course of least resistance with nature is nothing can ever go wrong with that. But when you follow the course of least resistance in the man-made, mechanistic, linear, scholastic world, everything can go wrong. Everything can go wrong, and it will go wrong.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not in the human, linear, mechanistic, scholastic world. I'm not following the course of least resistance, and I keep getting hammered on by friends because I'm not following the course of least resistance, because I'm allowing nature to step in and take its course.
And I noticed that even if you don't, like me, I don't have any friends telling me to do or not do something, but yet I do stumble upon kind of like a mind, some type of spirit or something that is challenges me and kind of gets mad at me for me breaking the rules.
Right. Yeah.
And I have to go through that, and that's something I want to share with people, because you have to have this bravery to, to challenge that, to break that rule, and
Well, yeah, and it's like what I said, it doesn't matter if you ascribe to Catholic beliefs, they pervade, or Christian beliefs, they still pervade all his mind. So you still have that programming. So as much as you, Julian, are not bought into the system, there's still that programming that you have to get through when you're bucking the system.
Yeah, it's like, well, this is what you would do with a kitten. You would take them and give them shots, and I'm like, what if you don't?
Yeah.
But then there's kind of like a spirit. I see it like an external kind of entity.
Absolutely. It is. It's, yeah, absolutely. It's that thought form that's out there that pervades everything. Yeah.
And that I need to really, at least go through that effort. I mean, but I do, and whatever it is, when I liberate myself from medical, like believing in doctors,
Or following the path of least resistance of the man-made, right? The man-made system.
In that case, I did have at one point my mom, she's like saying, but once I was kind of like sick to my stomach and was going to, and I decided not to go to the doctor, and she was like, but you're sick, you have to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
And I had to break through that. It's like this, it's kind of like a ceremony.
It's
kind of like a ritual.
Yeah.
Of I will not comply, I will not repeat the same ritual again. I will stop doing that ritual. I will stop believing that's the only way to go.
Exactly. So this belief, this falling into the Tao through Wu Wei, that the course of nature and following the path of least resistance, nothing can go wrong. This is not the superficial attitude of the mythic being of Pangloss in Voltaire's writings. The superficiality is that Pangloss is all talk, and he will not shamelessly scream when eaten by a shark. Certainly he will scream if he's being eaten by a shark, but he will feel while he's screaming that guilt, this load of guilt that he betrayed his own philosophy. And he won't realize that squirming and screaming when you're being eaten by a shark are the natural way of going along with pain. So remember, I told you this, your kitten fell from the high bunk and she was screaming. That is the natural way of going along with pain. And we humans have a hard time coping with that. We always want to rush in and fix it.
Right.
But you let it go its course without interfering and it will resolve.
Well, actually, what stopped her, I mean, it almost looked like me going into grabbing her and kind of like putting my hands, and it's amazing the power of your hands. It just healed her. I mean, she was kind of like going into this.
Yeah.
My brain got hurt or something kind of state, and as soon as I put my hands on her, that she healed.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's what her mama would have done. So you're taking the place of her mama.
Yeah.
So
that's a natural course. I would see that,
yeah, that is absolutely the natural course.
Natural courses, we are made to heal. We don't.
To nurture. That's just nurturing. That's compassion for the pain she's in, to say, I'm sorry, you didn't swoop in to fix her. You just swooped in to say, I'm sorry, I can hold you in your pain. And
right.
That resolved the pain. So Living the way of Tao, the watercourse way, is not compelling oneself to be calm and dignified under all circumstances at all times. The real and astonishing calm comes from being ready and willing without shame to scream and squirm when you're being eaten by a shark, to behave naturally in all circumstances. So the Tao, the watercourse way, the way of the halo of wind, is not one human's way. It's not the way of blue hair and woman. It's not the way of Ingrid. It's the universal way of peace, love, and Aini. And those are the words from the old ones tonight.
Alrighty, so that's pretty powerful. And you know what? I wanted to kind of comment something that an inspiration that came about when you were talking about the craftsmen and how they have to do kind of like the wheel one that he has to do it slower, and that reminded me of in the Nahuatl language, the Mexican language, the word for slow is yolik, but the root of the word yoli is life. So that made me think about that. It's like, well, that's pretty interesting how they kind of knew that concept of taking it slow. It's because it's not a literal translation of slow. It's kind of paced.
Right.
Right. Paced.
The pace of nature, the pace of life. Absolutely. Right. That's the Tao.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it is
and
cool.
That is the virtue right there. And I see that, for example, in the paintings. If I'm trying to rush myself to finish one, it won't be as pretty. If I pace myself and allow time to to go take its time, it comes out as it should. So that it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is.
It happens with music too. We tend to,
musicians, everything.
You want to accelerate your, you want to, and the more you're able to kind of slow down. Obviously, you don't, slow below the actual rhythm. You can't change the rhythm, but if you're able to, without changing the rhythm, kind of transmit like a slower, a better sounding, a more clear sounds of the notes, you're a better musician. So it's all about slowness. It's all about taking it slow.
It's all about space, and we'll talk about that next week in going deeper into Aini. It's all about space. It's all about closeness, the pulsation of closeness and space, closeness and space, closeness and space.
Silence.
Yeah. So we'll leave that track and go into the ontogeny of a multicellular being with a nervous system or behavioral domains.
Okay.
So when we meet a fortune teller who promises to reveal our future, we tend to have mixed feelings. On one hand, the idea appeals to us that someone can look into our future by looking at our hand or reading tea leaves or something, relying on a determinism that is inscrutable for us and decipherable by her or him.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, on the other hand, we resist the idea that we are determined, explainable, and predictable as beings because we cherish our free will and think we have it, but we don't. And we want to be beyond determinism. But at the same time, we want the doctor to cure us of our diseases by treating us as a structurally determined system. So then what relation is there between your organic unity being of autopoiesis and your behavior? Well, the entire analysis of the world and living beings so far has been done in deterministic terms, and seen like this, the universe becomes comprehensible and living beings emerge in it spontaneously and naturally. But yet in the ontogeny of a multicellular organism with a nervous system, we can now be sure that this system, as part of the organism, will have to function in it by contributing to its structural development from moment to moment. This contribution will be due both to its very structure and to the fact that the result of its operation, say for instance language, forms part of the environment which from instant to instant will operate as a selector in the structural drift of the organism with conservation of adaptation. So living beings function always in their structural present. So all organisms, which includes us, function as we function where we are at each instant because of our structural coupling. Nothing is an accident, and yet, however, our experiences are the result of creative freedom. So all varieties of frogs and toads feed on small animals such as worms, flies, ants, and moths. Their feeding behavior is similar. The frog orients itself to the prey, unleashes its long, sticky tongue, and retracts it quickly into its mouth along with the adhering prey. The frog's behavior is very effective. So as the observer, we would note that the frog always shoots out its tongue in the direction of the prey. So we could do an experiment with the frog. We could start by taking a tadpole, and with the careful hand of a surgeon, we cut the edge of its eye and rotate it 180 degrees. We then leave it to complete its larval development and metamorphosis until it becomes an adult. Now, we take this adult, cover its rotated eye, and show it a worm. And we see the frog shoot out its tongue with a deviation of exactly 180 degrees. So the prey is in front of and below the frog, but its tongue will shoot out backwards and up. So the frog shoots out its tongue as if the retinal zone where the image of the prey is formed is in its natural position. This experiment reveals that for the frog, there is no such thing as up and down, front and back. And if anyone's wondering, for this to be written, they've actually tormented frogs.
Right. Yeah.
There is only an internal correlation between the place where the retina receives a given perturbation and the muscular contractions that move the tongue, the mouth, the neck. In fact, the frog's entire body. So for the frog's nervous system, a sensory motor correlation is triggered between the position of the retina and the movement of a tongue, and not a computation on the world map. It's not triggered by a computation on the world map. So many other experiments have been done since the 1950s like this that give us direct evidence that the operation of nervous systems is an expression of its connectivity or structure of connections, and that behavior arises because of the nervous system's internal relations of activity. So if we separated a baby lamb from its mother for a few days and then return it to her, the lamb would still develop in an apparently normal way, but we wouldn't see anything peculiar until we observe its interaction with the other lambs. The others are playing, jumping around, headbutting, and yet the lamb that was separated doesn't do so because it does not know how to play. And we don't have a detailed answer to this structure. We can infer that the nervous system of the lamb separated from its mother is different than that of the others because of its temporary maternal deprivation. So during its first few hours after birth, the mother sheep licks its lamb constantly all over its body. And in separating the newborn lamb, we've interfered with this interaction. Again, wu wei. And all it entails in terms of tactile and visual stimulation and probably different kinds of chemical interactions. So this experiment shows these interactions to be decisive for structural transformation of the nervous system, which has consequences apparently very remote from the simple behavior of licking. So we wouldn't think that the simple behavior of licking has a way of how the lamb plays with its fellow lamb. So 2 Hindu girls who were rescued in 1922 from a family in northern India showed that they'd been reared in isolation from all human contact. One was 8 and the other was 5 when they were rescued. The 5-year-old died a short time after being found, and the other lived for another 10 years, so till she was 18. At the time they were found, the girls did not know how to walk on 2 feet, but they could move rapidly on all 4s, just like a wolf. Of course, they did not know how to speak, and they had inexpressive faces. They wanted only raw meat and exhibited nocturnal habits, just like the wolf. They rejected human contact and preferred the company of dogs or wolves, and they were in perfect health. They showed no signs of mental retardation or malnutrition. Their separation from their wolf family caused a profound depression in them that brought them to the brink of death. The girl who survived for 10 more years eventually changed her diet habits and her cycles of activity. She learned to walk upright on 2 feet, although she would revert to running on all 4s under stress of urgency. She could use a few words, although she never learned to speak properly. The family she was with felt that she wasn't completely human. So, in the Jungle Book, Mowgli could never have existed in flesh and blood. That just wasn't possible. The most popular and current view of the nervous system considers it an instrument whereby the organism gets information from the environment, and which it then uses to build a representation of the world, and uses that to compute behavior adequate for its survival in the world. This view requires that the environment imprints in the nervous system the characteristics proper to it, and that the nervous system uses the characteristics to generate behavior. However, we know that the nervous system is part of an organism that operates with structural determinism. So the structure of the environment cannot specify the changes, it can only trigger changes. So if you reflect on the examples, you will realize that our first tendency to describe what happens in each case centers on the use of some form of the metaphor getting information from the environment represented within. To use this type of metaphor contradicts everything we know about living beings. So then we're faced with a formidable snag, because it seems that the only alternative to a view of the nervous system as operating with representations is to deny the surrounding reality. If the nervous system does not and cannot operate with a representation of the surrounding world, what brings about the extraordinary functional effectiveness of man and animal and their enormous capacity to learn and manipulate the world? If we deny the objectivity of a knowable world, and we are not in the chaos of arbitrariness because everything else is possible, what then? So this is like walking the razor's edge. On one side, there's a trap, the impossibility of understanding the cognitive phenomena if we assume a world of objects that informs us, because there is no mechanism that makes the information possible. And on the other side of this razor's edge is another trap, is the chaos of arbitrariness of non-objectivity where everything is possible. That's solipsism. So we must learn to take the middle road, which is right on the razor's edge. And on one side, there is the trap of assuming that the nervous system operates with only representations, with only symbols. And this is a trap because it blinds us to the possibility of realizing how the nervous system functions from moment to moment as a definite system with operational closure. On the other side of the razor's edge is the other trap, denying the surrounding environment on the assumption that the nervous system functions completely in a vacuum where everything is valid and everything is possible. This is absolute cognitive solitude, or solipsism. It is a trap because it doesn't allow us to explain how there is a due proportion between the operation of the organism and its world. So the solution to avoiding these two abysses of the razor's edge is never losing sight of the fact that everything said is said by someone. The solution lies in changing the nature of the question also to embrace a broader concept and to understand that behavior is not something that the living being does in itself. It's something we can point to. The success or failure of a behavior is always defined by the expectations that the observer specifies. So the behavior of living beings is not an invention of the nervous system, and it is not exclusively associated with the nervous system because the observer will see behavior when we look at anything in its environment. What the nervous system does is expand the realm of possible behaviors by endowing the organism with a tremendously versatile and plastic structure.
Wow. And that's something I've been observing lately, about that plasticity, where we tend to think that our mind is so made up, right?
Yeah,
Our behavior is like this, and
absolute.
as soon as we're thinking or saying that, we are pointing that way. So I figured I've recently been kind of seeing this with my kids, that when I see some, what I would say, bad behavior, instead of kind of reinforcing that by telling them, oh, look how you're being really bad, or you're not being considered because you're acting this way or whatever, you can simply point to a different behavior, and the behavior is that I mean, it's kind of
Right.
it's never fixed. It's always where, like you said, I love what you said, where it's going to.
It's always on a gradient.
And it's what you're pointing towards as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you can simply just, and so it just comes to me, we think it's so difficult to convince someone, or to show someone the way, or to teach someone. And yes, if you analyze them, you see how stubborn they are, how many deceits they have, how many lies they have, how many bad beliefs they have. And so if you think logically, it's going to be really difficult to open them up to a different way of thinking. But no, if you are able to kind of just point them to a different way of seeing things, it's like you are the mind of them as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
you have that power.
Right? Because we learned all of our beliefs, we learned all of our programming by repetition, and I have an example of that. I have a friend down the road named Danny. He's very much the way of the materialistic, linear, mechanistic, scholastic world, right? Of cutting balls off, right? And more. And it irritates him to no end that I don't do that. Well, now there's this guy named John who's been staying with Danny, and his wife Edie, and helping out Danny a lot. And John has he used to be with Narconon, which is Church of Scientology, so he understands the energy. And he's, for a year now, he's been working between truck driving. He's been working with Danny and saying, but look at this. Can you see it a different way? And Danny is finally learning how to see it a different way, but it has taken John a year to direct his attention to something different, because you get so entrained, and this is the morphogenic fields too, of the that show the when you get so entrained with something, this goes to the Christian belief of the way to heaven is straight and narrow. When you get so entrained with something, your contours of your terrain are straight and narrow chasms as opposed to the hilly contour of hills, varying contour of hills and valleys, which is what you want, which then also goes to heart rate variability, which they have found makes you healthier, is if your heart rate has lots of variability. So any which way we look, science has proved that variability in terrain is what extends life, so to speak. But yet we get so fixated on our straight and narrow path to heaven.
In our spiritual purism.
Yep. Yeah.
In mono, I call it monomania.
Yeah.
Only one way, only one thing, only
one way only, right? One path only. This straight, narrow way where the cat, right? But that's not how nature works. I mean, you see mountains like that without a doubt.
One God, one diet, one.
Right. Only one. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Wow. I need to go find my gosling. The cool thing is, after we hatched 7 ducklings and 2 goslings, and then this other gosling racket that we named it came along. Racket's my grandbaby. We cleaned the incubator and put 13 more eggs in. And Alexis, my daughter, she put on the calendar. She's the incubation guru. Mm-hmm. May 20, stop turning the eggs, because you got to go in and turn them 3 times a day. Okay. Like Mama Duck turns them. I don't know. Anyway, go in and turn them 3 times a day till the 20th, and I forget how many days that is. But I did, which was Saturday. I stopped turning them, but I still would go to the incubator and talk to them. Every time I turned the eggs, I would talk to them. And she put on the calendar on the 24th, I should expect the eggs to hatch. Well, she left on Monday to go to work, which was the 22nd. Mm-hmm. And I went in to the room where I have the incubator, which is a room where I do some of my morning exercises, and I heard the peep peeps. So I knew there was at least 1 egg. So I talked to them, and by yesterday evening, I knew there were at least 2 to 3 eggs that had holes pecked in them from the inside out. Then I went to acupuncture this morning, or before I went to acupuncture, I found 10 of the 13 that had holes pecked in them. Come back from my acupuncture appointment, and there's a duckling hatch, popped itself right out of the egg.
Wow, amazing.
It's so cool, and it's so funny. It looks so small compared to the gosling that I have running around the house.
Yeah. I would like to see them one day.
Yeah, they're fun. It's so much fun.
Oh yeah.
So.
Except when they almost die.
Yeah. or they poop everywhere.
Okay. So what do you think is going to be the next week's conversation? We have a peek.
We're going to talk about the nervous system and cognition.
Cognition, so kind of like behavior.
Cognition is understanding, the ability of our brain to comprehend, to be what we are.
And it makes me think, is it really the brain that does that? Or does cognition lie somewhere else?
Well, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, so pretty cool. Cognition still on the sustenance branch, so 7th.
Yeah.
7th session of sustenance.
Yeah.
8:30 next time. 8:30 Central Standard Time for those who want to be on the live show. Otherwise, you'll find this recorded. Our most popular channel is in Rumble. Aloha, I Need Out Living. So welcome everyone who wants to join our conversations or join Aloha, I Need Out Living. That's what we are here for, to share, to expand, to explore, to experiment, and to find our way flowing to the Tao and with the Tao. The Tao Te now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. So thank you, everyone, and thank you, Ingrid, for your amazing talk and knowledge. So
Yeah.
I'll end the live stream.
Okay.